Hi, my name is Jamie Lynch, and you are listening to Eating Habits, my podcast about everything restaurants. I will explore the human element of the hospitality business, and I'll talk to the who's who in restaurants, explore their stories, and hear what's on their minds in the ever-changing landscape of the food and beverage industry. Hey there, listeners. Welcome back to the Eating Habits podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Lynch. On this week's episode, I'm joined with Julia Kane. She's our communications director and executive assistant for Fifth Street Group. We'll be looking back at our episodes up to this point and looking for some common threads amongst the industry, as well as taking some questions from some of our listeners and just kind of generally getting a state of affairs and the way things are going right now. So I hope you enjoy this little update. Enjoy the show. I'm Jamie Lynch, and you're listening to Eating Habits. What's up, Julia?
What's up, Chef? How are you?
I'm good. Today is episode 35. I've got Julia Kane joining me today. She's going to help me work through some questions that we have gathered from some people that are interested in what's going on with the state of the industry. And I've got some notes on our past 35 episodes. We're going to talk about kind of what we learned, what's on people's minds, and kind of have a little recap.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think it's going to be nice to take a step back and reflect on what we've been talking about since now February.
Yeah. So what do you think? I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
Because I have an idea too, but I want to hear what you think. Since you guys do a lot of the editing and listening to all the episodes, I mean, you guys hear probably more of these episodes than anybody else. You have to hear them over and over again. Do you see any reoccurring themes with the guests that we've had? Chefs, restaurant owners, growers, farmers. We've had the whole gamut, fishermen, all kinds of people on the pod and sharing kind of their experiences. Have you noticed any underlying similarities from guest to guest to guest?
Okay, might need a second to think about this.
Well, I have an answer for you.
I do think it's been interesting to cover different aspects of the industry. So it's not like the same exact episode. It's not a chef every single time talking about their struggles post-COVID and leadership and everything. So it's been really interesting to see the perspective from, a food critic, a food writer, PR agent, chefs, farmers, just everyone. But something that really has resonated with me is from one of the first episodes, Helen Schwab being an official food writer, was her kind of perspective on influencers. Mm-hmm. And that her role as a food writer was people that grew to know her palate and understand the way that she felt about restaurants. They could relate with that. Whereas influencers now, it's just pictures. They're saying, ooh, yummy, this was great. It's pretty.
Yes. And I think that like she highlighted some interesting things about. We talked a lot about critique culture, I think is what I called it in that episode, where it's like, let's talk about this critique culture. And it kind of spoke to Yelp and Instagram and all these social media sites that people can get on and share their views. I thought it was interesting. She kind of had a bit of disdain for people that didn't know how to use their words.
Exactly.
To describe the experience they were having.
Mm-hmm.
I loved that episode. I loved chatting with her. It was eye-opening for me, being a chef and never have met her and having cooked for her and having my restaurants reviewed by her, to finally sit down and get to hear her side of things. It was really interesting.
It is interesting too, and she is considered an expert in something, and then this wave of people come in and try and do the same thing, but with no real basis to it.
Right. And I think that's the beauty of having a reoccurring critic or a reviewer of restaurants and whatever, is that there's a standard, right? Like she had a very specific standard that she would rate a restaurant or experience by. Mm-hmm. And a restaurant could be great anywhere within that realm, right? Like it didn't have to be a fine dining restaurant with X, Y, and Z on the menu and this and that to be excellent, right? Mm-hmm. It could be a taco shop,
exactly,
but fall into the excellent category because of the price point, the cleanliness of the the building and the the experience, getting your food from the window or the whatever, right? And in having that standard, which we don't have in social media, right? It's like everybody's got their own opinion.
Yeah.
And it's all over the place.
Also,
so
whenever we talk to a chef in Charlotte, they always mention, oh, and when Helen Schwab wrote about us, the next day we were flooded. So Helen Schwab was a recurring theme.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. She came up a lot. And actually a bunch of chefs were surprised that she talked to me. They were like, wow, I'm surprised she's not doing it anymore.
Yeah. And it's so cool. That was the first time you saw her face.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting that she asked to remain anonymous. She didn't want me to post any like pictures of us together or anything like that. Cause
I still haven't seen her face.
Oh, you don't know what she looks like still?
The picture, she was turned around.
Okay, cool. I don't think she looked like what I thought she did in my head. Yeah. Cause like, having thought about her so much in the restaurant, like, and what's going to happen with the review and this and that, you build like stories in your head, right? Like you create a story, and I don't think she was at all the person that I expected.
Yeah.
But she was awesome. What a great guest, and had so many experiences. I look forward to having her back on. Actually,
yeah.
I think it's time to do a little round 2 with her. One of the things that I noticed come up a lot, and this kind of speaks to the state of the industry, is a lot of people touched on either physical or mental wellness, and I'm not sure if that is a result of being on the flip side of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Right? Like everybody was so focused on health and, restrictions and all this kind of stuff for a while, or if it's a shift in the industry as a whole. Maybe the industry is looking for ways to become healthier, to become more sustainable, which I hope it is. And obviously we're pushing for, but it wasn't just me beating the drum. There was a lot of different chefs talking about sobriety, talking about different types of wellness rituals or things that they were doing and how important that is for them and their teams. Yeah.
I think as detrimental as COVID was, it also gave people an opportunity to step back after just years of go, not reflecting, and build those healthy habits that then once everything reopened, they could reinstate.
Yeah. I think it's also, what's the word I'm looking for? It is, I think, a responsibility for restaurant owners and operators to consider that aspect of things. What can they do to help their teams balance better? What incentives can they give them? Whether it's health insurance or it's gym memberships or it's PTO, right? Paid time off or whatever it is, to help kind of infuse that idea of wellness and sustainability to their teams. I know we're certainly trying to do as much of that as possible. I've heard a lot about different creative avenues that people are looking at to do stuff like that. And I'd be interested in exploring some more of those ourselves. Is there anything that you could think of that we didn't mention that employees might be looking for as a wellness perk of the job?
I'm not sure how realistic this is, but I think offering a talk therapist to employees, because therapy is extremely expensive.
I'm actually super glad you mentioned that. Yeah. So this goes back to the episode with Juliet. She has a bunch of like counseling and therapy offices in Charlotte. And she actually mentioned to me, and I'll reach out to her about this since you mentioned it, trying to get together some sort of corporate membership, right? For staff and stuff, where like we as an employer could enlist their services, and then employees can get, X amount of time or whatever. I don't know how it would work, but she definitely mentioned it.
Like
I think
a program to offer
some sort of program for therapy for restaurant people that's, hospitality specific, dealing with hospitality type problems, whether it's work-life balance, it's, substance abuse, things like that. It could be relationships, whatever. I think that's a really good idea. Actually, I think we should pursue that and see what that looks like.
And then what you had touched on in the episode with Brian Baxter too is just encouraging your team to also prioritize their mental health, because at the end of the day, they have to want to help themselves.
Yep.
and just cut back on the partying and drinking. And, you know, they're still always going to have 2 days off a week, but it's what you're doing after your shift.
Right.
On your days off. Are you getting that rest that you need to work the rest of the week?
I think one of the important takeaways from that was, for me, was kind of like personal responsibility, right? Like, and I think this goes for anybody coming into the industry or is in the industry, working in restaurants, wanting to move up in restaurants, wanting to excel. And I mean, I think it can carry over into any industry, but that personal responsibility for your own growth and taking ownership of your wellness, controlling yourself, balancing your life, and so that you're able to focus on the job at hand. You know, I see a lot of distracted workers coming through the restaurants, and you see it all over the place. I mean, I don't know why. I don't know if it's a generational thing. I don't know if it's a result of maybe some of the education that people are getting, if it's the places they've worked or whatever. But when I was a young cook coming up, and the way that I learned, it was, you know, you had to earn your spot, right? It was nothing was given to you, nothing, you weren't entitled to anything. And the only way you were going to get a shot, even an opportunity, was if you kind of had eye of the tiger, right? You were focused when you were there. You were doing whatever was needed to be done. And then the people that did, you know, above and beyond were the people that got opportunities.
Yeah.
Opportunities to move up. And it's really difficult to balance all that if you're a fucking party animal and you're hungover all the time, or you're late to work. You know, those things kind of like counter.
And also, if you're someone that's really busting your ass all week, everyone's seeing the work you're putting in, but you're also complaining every day. I'm so tired. I'm exhausted. All of this. If people know that after your shift, you're going out and drinking all night, that discredits you from being tired from working hard, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Everybody works hard.
Yeah.
Right? So everybody's tired, you know? But if you can't do it, why can't you do it?
One of my rules of thumb is don't complain about something if you're not going to do anything about it.
I like that.
And I think that can also tie in with mental health too.
Right. 100%. Yeah. What other things were people talking about? I think, well, one thing that's interesting about the state of the industry kind of came through the conversation with Hannah Schneider, and talking about, I think everybody's generally aware of this, we touched on it already, is the influence and importance of social media in diners' decisions on where to eat, right? And we've known this for a long time. I mean, Fifth Street Group is very active in our
with marketing
and social media. I mean, we've got, you know, there is a group of all of you behind the scenes that are completely in that game. And I think that just because we understand the importance of it, I think that people need to understand that. Restaurateurs and chefs need to know that, but you got to have the product to back it up, right? I mean, anybody can, you know, one of my favorite things is like Pat always shows me, like, talks about this. I don't know if it's a fucking ice cream shop or whatever the fuck it is, but they've got like the milkshakes with like, you know,
the Crazy Mason, I think it's called,
or whatever,
yeah.
and bacon strips and shit hanging out of the glass, and it's just like on Instagram, it looks amazing, right? It's like a circus in a glass, and that's great.
That's a product that's made for social media,
right? For that,
yeah.
And so, you know, my take on all that stuff is like, that's all fine and dandy. Like, you can have your little, you know, kitschy pitches or whatever. But if you don't have the quality product to back it up, you're probably not going to be successful. And
that kind of touches on what Hannah Schneider was talking about. She doesn't want to open something trendy. Like, those types of things are very trendy right now, because it's going to get you a lot of likes on Instagram and views on TikTok, but
it'll give you a lot of traffic
for sustainable.
It'll give you a lot of traffic for the short term.
Exactly.
Right?
It's like 15 minutes of fame.
Right. And then once you're on somebody's story, then they don't care about it anymore.
Yeah. And how often realistically are you going to go and get a milkshake with 5,000 calories?
Yeah. I mean, I might do it, but only have like 2 bites.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah. And I think it also, I think, sets you up for failure, because what you're doing, one thing that I kind of love and hate about the social media thing is that, you know, when I was cooking for people at the restaurants, And they would like, part of the excitement and satisfaction for me was that anticipation and surprise, right? People, they've heard about the restaurant, they've heard about me, they've heard about the menu, whatever, and they show up, and then it's that series of expectations being just blown out of the water, right? Whether it's the writing on the ceiling and the decor of the restaurant, the soundtrack, and then the food comes and they're like, holy shit, like, what is this? Like, this is so much better than I thought, or whatever. That, to me, like, that experience is what is really special about restaurants. And I'm afraid social media, with, the expectations are preset, right? You're showing people the menu, you're giving them these expectations. And if you don't deliver, well, you've hurt yourself rather than helped yourself.
Yeah.
You might have gotten through the door, but they're not coming back.
And even with reading reviews too, if someone's talking about how amazing the fried chicken is, but you don't like that spicy honey that goes on top, and you just think because that person liked it, you're going to like it, and you get it, and you're like, this is terrible.
Right.
You can't assume that everyone writing reviews has the same palate as you.
Right. No, they don't. I'm sure that they don't.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's an interesting state of the industry that I'd be interested to see where that ends up, like how that evolves over the next couple of years. Like what is the new, I mean, TikTok is the new thing. It's not even new. How long has TikTok been around? A couple of years,
yeah,
right?
It's been around for a few years. It got really famous in the pandemic.
Yeah, so like the past 2 years, it's kind of like blown up. And would you say, because I don't know anything about it, so I have to ask you because you're the professional here. Would you say that is probably the most active used social media right now, or?
I would say so.
Yeah.
I mean, the type of views that you see on there as opposed to Instagram or Twitter, or Facebook it's crazy to even believe there are that many people on the apps, let alone watching this one particular video.
Right.
So I'm excited for the future of social media.
You think it's going to get more real?
I do think so.
Good.
I think with TikTok, that's helped to
get there.
Yeah, help to get there and help to.
I like all the puppies. Like,
yeah,
I watch all the puppy TikToks. That's what I'm about. If you check out my thing, it's all the talking dogs.
Yeah, I think TikTok has more personality to it.
Gotcha.
It lets you show that more.
Sustainability comes up a lot.
We went through a whole farmer era.
Yeah.
On the podcast.
Yeah, and I think when I think of sustainability now, I think about the mental health. I think about the sustainability of our workforce, the sustainability of our business, the sustainability of our products. Like years ago, when I was the executive chef, sustainability to me meant, where's my product coming from? And can I get the same product consistently at the same quality, right? And how can that product close the loop in my culinary journey, right? So like, how can I give back to the community that I'm in, support them so that they can better support me with better products, right? Like that's kind of how my version of sustainability was. And I think now, fast forward to, this is, 10 years later, I've had an organic farm. I've worked on the farms. I've interviewed Sammy. I've interviewed other chefs like William Disson, who, champion sustainability and stuff like that. And then all these conversations also about mental health and everything else, the workforce, livable wages. To me now, all these things feed into that. And I think it would be wise for restaurateurs, chefs to think about that. Think about the bigger picture a little bit. Spend a few minutes every day thinking about the sustainability of your workforce. Not just if your shift's going to get covered today, but are your shifts going to be covered a year from now with quality employees? Will you be able to expand your business? Are you doing the kind of good work that's going to allow you to expand? A lot of people don't want to expand. A lot of chefs are happy doing what they're doing with one store or tasting menu restaurants or all these things. And then there's other people that are out there trying to, grow their footprint and, have a bigger voice in the hospitality game. And I think I've also been on both sides of that. You know, like my dream was always to open my own restaurant. That was it. Close the book, you know? But now, fast forward to here, that dream's been realized. But the importance of the bigger picture is what's important now, right? And all these things that we talk about on the podcast, that we hear about from our friends, chefs, owners, and everybody else, we can't realize all these things and these dreams if we don't continue to expand, because that expansion is going to give us the power to change things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, as opposed to staying complacent.
Yeah, staying complacent, having one restaurant that does, whatever, 200 covers a night. That's a great restaurant. You can pay yourself well and you can have a nice, happy little life. But can you change the collective consciousness of an industry with that?
Probably not.
Probably not. And I think that's what's become important to me. And I think some of these other activists, chef activists out there that really want to help to change the direction of the industry for the better, for the positive, to address a lot of the things that we've identified as being problematic: mental health, substance abuse and drug addiction, livable wages for staff, quality and sustainability, all these things, ecological health. The ecological health of our community is important for sustainability of our restaurants. Mm-hmm. If we can't get quality, healthy food locally, we're going to have to bring it in from somewhere else. Well, how does that help us?
Yeah.
In the sustainability, right? Anyways, so I think going back, I think the expansion, the growth of, our vision and our business will help afford us the ability to affect change.
And I think in our case too, with Tip the Kitchen, the more we expand and continue that program, mm-hmm. the more jobs we're offering with a livable wage.
Exactly.
We'll invite more people into the industry and keep that flow, keep mm-hmm. that influx, and no one's going to be barred from working in the industry because of their financial circumstances. But if we have more stores, that's more people that we can help. Exactly.
And I think also 100%, you're 100% accurate on that. And I think I am surprised that less restaurants picked up on the Tip the Kitchen model. There's a lot of people doing a lot of different things. And
it's like once in a blue moon, we hear, oh, this person's interested. Let's send them over all the information about it. Right. I'm surprised too.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling.
Well, and I think there's a lot to it. So I think the biggest barrier to entry for Tip the Kitchen is that there's a commitment on the side of the ownership that you're going to spend more money.
Yeah.
Right. The match is the thing, I think, that might deter some people from doing it because it's a substantial amount of money. I think we are over $2 million in tips generated for our staff company wide. It's over that. It might be $2.25 million, something like that. But last I checked, like a couple weeks ago, it was we just beat the $2 million mark. So if that's true, and we match 50% up to a thing, we've spent almost $1 million mm-hmm. of our own income, restaurant income, on this project, which I can see being tough for some owners.
Yeah. But then again, they also can scale that number based on the numbers that they're doing, based on the size of their business, the amount of people working in the back of house. It could be a lot less than $500 a day.
Sure. Totally.
And still show the community that, hey, we're doing this with you. Mm-hmm. We're putting this money we're in a partnership.
Right. The important thing about it, I think, is that you're right. It is scalable. It's still going to be a percentage of your sales, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I think we kind of calculate that it's about 1% increase of our operating costs to do the program. If you balance that out with our lack of turnover, our lack of training costs, all these other costs that have gone down as a result of us, retaining staff, mm-hmm. we think it's about a 1% commitment on our part. Although monetarily it's more than that, but it offsets some other things.
Which I think is a pretty good percentage when you're investing in your people. And
right. And I think that's the important part, right? Is being okay with investing that money into your people rather than into your building or into your whatever, your pocket. I think is part of the problem, because it's a business, right? Restaurants are a business, and owners need to make money, and that money's coming from the bottom line. It's not coming from, at least in our model, it wasn't about raising prices. I think a lot of people did that. Mm-hmm. Like straight away, they're like, let's raise prices. We'll pay people more.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that works, but you end up cannibalizing your business by, pricing people out.
Yeah, becoming out of reach for
the masses or whatever. And maybe for upscale fine dining restaurants, that's not a big deal, right? Like the people that are dining there are affluent. They don't care about a couple dollars here or there. It's not going to matter to them. But in a restaurants like ours that do volume, right? We need to be full. Mm-hmm. We need to do a lot of volume. So pricing people out of our restaurants wasn't an option. The key to all of this, and I think the most important thing that I want people to know, is that this model works. Like it works. Our staff they're pleased, with the income that they make, and it's spreading out. The word is out. People are starting to come to us. They've heard about Tip the Kitchen. They want to be a part of it. They want to work with our group because of it. They want to feel that they are respected and taken care of and looked out for. And so the important note about that is that Tip the Kitchen works for your people, and that's going to work for your business. So people should give that a shot. Think about it, at least, Mm-hmm. All right, cool. So we have some questions here that some people put out that I think we should go through and answer.
You want me to ask you them?
Yeah, you ask them. You be the asker.
Okay.
I do all the asking. Okay, you do some asking.
All right. The first question came from William Underwood.
Cool.
And I thought this was a really great question. And this goes back to Tip the Kitchen. And he said, how did you come to the conclusion to address the back of house wage gap the way you did?
That's a good question. So first, let me just say what's up to William. I actually just bought a piece of his artwork yesterday. Awesome. It's a super cool piece. I'm going to post about it on Instagram and stuff and show people what it's about, but he's doing some really cool creative artwork. So I purchased that from him, and I'm a huge supporter of his creativity. So, and that's a good question. I think that it started from during the pandemic. The realization came to us, and I think it started with Patrick, but the realization that we had just put everybody out of work. We had to lay off our staff. So we were kind of going through the motions of that, kind of trying to reconcile with that, trying to come to terms with like, what the fuck is going on and where are we going to go from here? And I think that led to the idea of, if we can get back to doing what we're doing, are people that work for us making enough money to survive? Right? I think it was the bottom line. And the realization that $12, $15 an hour, $10 an hour, $13 an hour is not a livable wage in this country. Like, it's just not
sustainable.
It's not sustainable. It's not livable. Like you can't be a grown adult in this country with, and have a vehicle and a house and insurance and daycare, and a roof over your head and meals on the table every night for $13 an hour. It's not possible. Like, I really don't believe it is. And I think that realization is what sparked the idea, right? Okay, fine. So if we're part of the problem, right, we're paying all these people $10, $13, $14 an hour. We all agree it's not a livable wage. What are we going to do about it? We can't reopen our restaurants and then continue to damage the industry. Like, we've just been, the industry was annihilated during the pandemic. So the concept of like trying to heal the industry, if we're able to reopen, we need to make sure that we are doing it responsibly. and that we're going to be good stewards to the industry and try to affect change and not be a part of the problem. So I think that's where it came from. And then, Pat started talking to me and Alejandro about it, talking about different ideas that we might implement. We looked at a lot of different policies that other people have tried, no tips, pooled tips, whole house tips, like, all this kind of stuff. Maybe we do no tips and we just raise everybody's on a salary, all these kinds of things. And Pat really orchestrated the Tip the Kitchen, because there was a lot of elements to it to make it work.
It's like every aspect of it is thought through.
Yeah.
Like nothing was missed.
Nothing was missed. And we talked a lot about it. And I can't remember exact instances, but I do remember being out, we all moved into an apartment together or a house together on Isle of Palm during the pandemic and kind of like circled the wagons to figure out what we were going to do. And I think we were sitting around kind of the kitchen table one day talking about Tip the Kitchen and the idea of it and kind of where Pat was at with it. And he would use us as a sounding board to like, hey, what if we do this? How does that work? What, as an employee, what would this do? This and that. And we just kind of were working through the problem like over and over again. And it was frustrating. Like, you had to go back to the drawing board over and over again. It's like, oh, well, that won't work because, okay, fine. If we start tipping the kitchen and now the tips aren't going to the servers, now the servers are fucking pissed. Now we've got a civil war going on in our restaurant. That's not cool. So how do we address that? So then we go back to the drawing board, and he worked out the stopgap, appendix of this whole thing where, we would, balance that out and stuff. So there was a lot of back and forth. It was a long process, but the important thing was that we felt strongly that it had to be a partnership with our guests, that it wasn't solely our responsibility to pay people more. It was society's responsibility to say these people deserve more, and they're going to be a part of the solution. And we'll share in that responsibility. And so that's really, I think, how it started to take shape.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wonder, just since we mentioned that we're a little bit surprised that Tip the Kitchen hasn't spread like wildfire. I wonder if Danny Meyer had the same thought about his no tipping policy. Because I haven't really seen that anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they're doing it anymore.
Yeah, they aren't doing it.
Yeah, they stopped doing it.
After the pandemic, they stopped doing it.
I think a lot of that was because, I believe it's because front of the house staff wanted to get tipped. Mm-hmm. Like, they make really good tips. And, I think one of the things that I like about tipping is that it empowers the staff to take ownership of their income.
Mm-hmm.
At least a portion of it.
Amount.
Right. And we push that to the back of the house teams, that they have some responsibility here to earn. Mm-hmm. And by focusing at work, coming to work healthy, ready to go, fired up, putting out great product, tasting everything, doing it quickly, they can influence their income. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an empowering tool. And one more thing is, it also empowers our team to self-regulate themselves, right? Mm-hmm. Like, a bunch of line cooks that are sharing a tip pool don't want some slouch that's sitting outside smoking cigarettes.
I was just going to say that. Yeah. It empowers them to work more as a team.
Right. And to regulate each other.
Hey, you got to step it up because...
How many breaks is that today?
Yeah.
Or are you going to work? Are you going to clean the walk-in? What do you, like, you're out here lollygagging and we're in here trying to make tips.
The same way that the front of house tip pool system is too.
Exactly. So I think
which is also really interesting too. When I first started, I started as a server at Church and Union.
Because
I've
we're
never
a pooled
seen
house.
that before. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I always forget.
It's so interesting, that model too. I wonder
Mm-hmm.
if other stores would implement that, because again, every aspect was thought through, and it motivates you to provide better service to guests so that you, at the end of the day, make more money.
Right.
But are also guaranteed a certain amount of money from the tip pool.
Right. And I think I forget sometimes that that's not normal. Like, we've been doing that since we opened. And so, for us, it is normal. Like, we do a pooled house. I think early on when we first, I think it was fairly new to at least the Southeast. what I will say is that the pooled house is designed to be best for everybody, right? And even the top earning servers still earn more, right? Because I believe it's I think it's 15%.
So
15% of their tips goes into the
pool, and then anything above 15% you keep. So if they're having a 30% tip percentage throughout the night, they're keeping 15%.
Right.
I don't
yes.
know.
Yes, that would be the additional 15.
The additional 15%.
Right. Exactly. Comes to them.
And then also that other 15% is then being redistributed out to them.
Right.
Based on how many hours you've worked. But.
Correct. Exactly. And I think what that does is it helps to even out the highs and lows of front of the house financing.
And it
right?
also
it's like
just
you don't
implements
have like
that teamwork. Like
right.
You're always lending a helping hand. If you're not doing something you're doing for your tables, you're doing it for someone else's tables.
Exactly.
Wherever I have worked in the past has just been so every man for himself. I've never experienced a team like that before, and being able to help someone else out. And then when I need help, people are lining up. Yeah.
And then that self-regulation is also an important part of that, right? Like the servers, I mean, they're the biggest band of pirates there is. Like they will toss somebody into the ocean, right? If they're not pulling their weight. And I think that that's a really helpful tool as part of the pooled house, is that they will keep an eye to make sure people are giving good service, and if they're not pulling their weight, they'll let you know,
and getting off the clock as soon as they can.
Yep, totally. Yeah.
This is helpful for any chef that is planning on expansion to hear a little bit of your wisdom on this. But how do you manage 5 different chef teams across 3 different states?
Good question. I don't know that I do half the time. No, I think having an amazing team is the key. I mean, it's all about hiring the right people. Obviously, Chef Adam is, my crutch in this. He's my right-hand man. So we're able to divide and conquer. Adam's worked with me for a decade now. So he's an amazing chef in his own right. Like he's got his own talents and brilliance about him. But because we've worked together closely for so long, we're able to spread out and cover a lot more ground. So for me, I would say it's the team. It's all about hiring the right people, training them well, supporting them when they need it is important. Make sure that you give, a lot of the work that I try to do is for my team. A lot of it isn't about me or the guests so much anymore. It's more about how do I support them? How do I get them what they need or want or whatever to help them do their jobs better? So that's kind of how I do it. That's my approach.
I think also having an open flow of communication constantly, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yes.
Can help you mentally be there even if you physically aren't.
Yep, totally. We have a lot of systems too. I mean, systems help. Like having, you're saying flow of communication, like we have very specific threads to keep each other informed as to what's going on. So when somebody's off, for instance, if Adam's, has a family day and is off, I can totally pick up the pieces exactly where we left off because of that communication. So I think that's a good tool.
I think that's the most important part. All right, we're going back to Tip the Kitchen. I think this is interesting because we talk a lot about what Tip the Kitchen is, but the question is, what benefits do you see from Tip the Kitchen firsthand? Well,
turnover obviously is the biggest game changer, right? It's the employees that we have that are reaping the benefits of Tip the Kitchen stick around. So we're not having to retrain people every 6 weeks, 8 weeks, a month, or a year, whatever, right? People are sticking around for a long time and improving. And so that's probably the most noticeable thing. The quality of their work has improved. I think part of having some ownership of your income that way through Tip the Kitchen has pushed people to want to do better while they're at work, wanting to work cleaner, harder, tastier food, that kind of thing. So that has definitely improved. And then just generally people showing up. We have less call outs and stuff than we used to because people know Like if I call out, I'm not on my, I'm not only missing out on my, my hourly wage, but I'm missing out on a potential $100 bonus for just being there today. And that means a lot to people. So those are the major things that I notice.
Yeah. Because every day for them is an opportunity to make even more money
to earn. Yeah.
Than they.
But also, I mean,
predict.
the staff morale is better too. I think because of that self-regulation, we've weeded out some of the people that don't necessarily fit with our group. And as a result, the improved income, the ownership of that income, the self-regulation, all these things, the general morale of our team is positive. People seem more inspired. They seem more pleasant to be around, happy to be at work. That's a huge improvement.
Yeah. What are 3 not so complex go-to meals that you make at home?
Ooh. I mean, the meal that we do most often is roasted chicken. And the reason for that is that we can do one big prep day, and the big prep is basically seasoning a whole bird and roasting it, right? It takes literally 5 minutes to put into the oven. It takes about 45 minutes to an hour to cook, depending on the size of your bird, but it takes 5 minutes to prep. And not only that, we throw in like roasted mushrooms and stuff into the roasting pan at the last 10 minutes. So there's one dish to clean at the end. But the beauty about a whole chicken for 2 people is that it gives us 3 or 4 meals, right? Because then the next day is chicken soup, almost always, right? And there's 1,000 variations you can do there. We could throw a little roux in there and thicken it and create more of like a chowder. We could add some dumplings to it and have chicken and dumplings. We could do, right? So there's all these variations on a soup that we can do with the leftover meat and the bones from the bird. So that's it, roasted chicken.
Roasted chicken.
Lately, I've been making a lot of pizza, which drives Corey crazy. Like she'll come home and there's like a bomb went off. There's like flour everywhere and dough balls proofing on the counter and,
Maybe
tomatoes.
Open a little pizza window for your neighbors.
I'm getting geared up for the Ophelia's mission. So there's a lot of pizza going on. I enjoy making pizza at home. I'm actually getting good at it finally. So, and the deal with that is just like mastering the dough. Like if you can master the dough and how to work with the dough, then the rest of it's just fun. But like the first few times when, the temperature of the dough is not right, it gets all stretchy and it rips and breaks and it's a pain in the ass and that's no fun. But once you master the dough, that's an easy one. So
where do you get this chicken that you're roasting?
That's a good question. Often I buy the chicken from Whole Foods.
Okay.
Whole Foods is kind of our go-to for most of our meats, especially nowadays after like the supply chain is jacked up. Like getting good quality meats, pork and poultry is hard to do in grocery stores these days. So I will make the extra effort to get to Whole Foods. They have quality stuff. They're sourced from good farms. Reputable places, and I trust their stuff. And not only that, you can see it. I mean, you can see the quality of their product. You pay a little bit more for it, but that's where I go.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. What are some large misconceptions people have about the back of house? Stereotypes or? Oh,
that's a good question. I don't know. That we're all a bunch of crazy drug addicts, I guess. I don't know. We're all sober now. I don't know what they're talking about. Let's see. I don't know. I think that the back of the house is like, people think that we are mean or rough or assholes, I guess. And I think because like the mentality in the back of the house is like very direct, right? We don't have a whole lot of wasted communication, a whole lot of like, at least I don't. Like as a chef, I'm very direct with people. Even if it, maybe rubs them the wrong way, I don't really care about that, right? Like I'm not out to hurt people's feelings or whatever, but at the same time, I have a message to deliver and here's how we're going to do this, how we're going to do it. So I think people think that we can be assholes or whatever, but it's really that we're just a little more direct and efficient in our communication.
And going back to Brian Baxter's episode, he was talking about when you get all heated up in the kitchen, you get pissed about something.
Yeah.
You talk or yell it out, and then 5 minutes later, that's fresh off your mind.
Yes.
You guys are back to business.
Yeah,
it's not personal.
Yeah, him and I are a lot of like that way. I don't hold a grudge. You know, I can be very difficult on my team at times because I have high expectations for them, and our standards are super high. So if I get heated with the team during service, I'm always, you know, as soon as the tickets are off the board, I will let everybody know, you know.
Yeah.
I'm
you
also
don't have time to stay mad.
Yeah, I don't have time to stay mad, but it's also not good for the team, you know. And I think, you know, one of the important lessons that I learned is, you know, as a chef is humility and suspending your ego and like owning your shit. You know, so like if I fuck up and rage at the team and whatever, you know, I'm always the first one to say, hey, like that's on me. Like, sorry guys, that's not you. Like that's me not controlling my temper. That's me, you know, whatever, not communicating properly or whatever. And trying to own your own stuff as an example for your team of like, you know, it's okay not to be perfect, right? It's okay to lose your shit or whatever, but like reel it in, correct it, and move forward. Mm-hmm. You know, don't stay mad. There's not enough time in the day for that.
So this question kind of ties into the last one with the perceived way the back of house is. Have you watched The Bear? The show?
I think I watched 2 episodes.
Okay. What'd you think?
I got a little like a little anxiety watching it.
I saw, I think it was Bon Appetit put out an Instagram post about chefs saying they were really triggered.
Yeah, I was super triggered. I was like, I don't know. I don't want to watch this. Like I live this shit, you know? I honestly have kind of dropped off it. Mm-hmm. I think it's a really interesting concept. And I think I can understand why people love it. I think that they're doing a good job of telling a story that there are a lot of stories like that out there. And so I think it's a good glimpse into chef life a little bit, but like for me, I don't need to see that shit. Yeah. Like I fucking live that. I'm good.
So you think they're doing a pretty good job portraying that? Yeah,
for sure. 100%.
Interesting.
Yeah. And what's the dude's name who plays, do you know who plays the bear? What's his? He does a fucking awesome job.
Yeah. I've only seen a few episodes too. I've kind of fell asleep during it.
Yeah. It's really good. I mean, if people
seems like it's really hitting close to home. Yeah. Like they really nailed it.
Yes. Totally. I think if people want to, what's his name? Jeremy White? Yeah. He's awesome.
Jeremy, if you're listening.
Yeah. Great job, man. Holy shit. You freaked me out watching that thing. But if people want to get a glimpse into the kitchen without having to go like in the kitchen, that's a good story that will show you what it's kind of like.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think I know the answer to this.
Okay.
Do you think that guests are more difficult or more understanding post-COVID?
What do you think I would say?
I think more difficult.
Yes, they're definitely more difficult. I mean, they just are. I think, and like, I believe that there's a collective trauma that happened, and society's trying to figure out how to get back to normal because people. And this isn't everybody. Like there are a lot of amazing guests that are coming out and supporting and being supportive and just wanting to enjoy, you know, the things that they missed. But there's a lot of entitled assholes that are coming out too. They want to share their fucking opinions, and I don't fucking care. Like go eat somewhere else. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to hear it. Neither does anybody else. You know what I mean? Like nobody cares what venom you're spewing all over your Yelp page. Nobody fucking cares. Like just, you know, enjoy the hospitality. We're there to help people. We're there to take care of them.
And enjoy your company too.
Yeah.
You're out to eat with someone that hopefully you enjoy. Or multiple people.
You would hope.
When you say that we're ruining your night for one mess up.
Yeah. What?
It's kind of insulting to the rest of the people that you're with. It's like, okay, well, I guess that camaraderie, like that company wasn't important to you.
Yeah. I think people are difficult, but I think they'll get over it. I hope that chefs and owners and are going to stand up for themselves. You know, I think, you know, we have been abused by the pandemic too, right? Like we had to close all of our shit down and somehow survive. And I think that cut deeply into a lot of operators' souls. I think you're going to see a lot of people kind of sticking up for themselves, and that whole customer's always right shit isn't going to fly as well as it did before.
Yeah.
I know that we have a code of conduct that we expect our guests to, abide by when they come to our restaurants.
Yeah.
So, be gracious, enjoy yourselves. That's what you're here for.
I think that kind of spans across all industries too, because I remember when stores clothes stores, retail opened up, my mom went and she was so excited. She was like, oh my God, it's going to be amazing. And she was like, oh my God, everyone was an asshole. She was like, I thought that when the doors to everything reopened, everyone was going to be so grateful and accept anything just because that was stripped away from them for so long. And she was like, everyone was horrible. And it was just like eye-opening to be like, is this how the rest of the world is going to go after this? Yeah.
Well, I think that it will return to normal. I think that you see it. It was definitely worse, right when we reopened, and there were still a lot of restrictions, and people were very wary about what was going on, and just, you could sense some uneasiness in the air. I definitely feel like as time's going on, people are loosening up, and it's becoming better. And I think that there will always be assholes out there, but I think it's getting better for sure. People are starting to become more appreciative and understanding that time is limited and you have to enjoy it. So don't be a jerk.
Heard that. How would you get young people interested in the industry?
I think young people should start learning how to cook earlier. I never knew how to cook. And, honestly, my folks are not very good cooks either. And I think had I had my hands in food earlier, younger, and had more of an understanding of like where food comes from and how to make things happen, and just really basic, simple stuff. How to hard boil an egg. How do you cook pasta? How do you boil a pot of pasta? Things like that. I think if you start teaching young people that process, they will become a lot more interested in food and cooking. And then by way of that, the industry. Mm-hmm. That's how I would do it.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
Maybe writing a kid's cookbook would be
oh my God.
That would be fun, right?
That's a good idea. Write that down.
Yeah. Kids cookbook. There you go. Hey, play with your food.
That's pretty solid.
We'll call it Play with Your Food. All right. Play with your food. We just came up with something. There we go. Cool. All right, and I'm going to take one more. We're going to do one more, and then we got to go.
And this is my favorite.
Okay, cool.
And I'm really interested to hear the answer. So it's, what is your creative process for creating a new menu item?
Ooh, good one. That changes from time to time. So a lot of my inspiration comes in one of two ways, or it could be both ways. One comes from different cultures. I get interested in cultural things, whether I see stuff or traveling, and it kind of sparks an interest, and then I will explore that culture through its food, types of ingredients, style of cooking, whatever, and I'll start playing with those techniques and ingredients and kind of rolling them into my repertoire, and then I'll start creating dishes based on those things. So that's one way. The other way I start the creative process is with an ingredient. So it could be, it's the fall now. We're getting into like winter squash season, things like that. I might start with a kabocha squash, right? A really cool Japanese kind of winter squash. And then I'll say, all right, I want to do a dish with this. And then I'll start exploring, and then I'll start thinking about the ingredient. What is special about the ingredient? Well, it's got a cool color. It's got like this really kind of mustardy orange color to it. All right, that's kind of cool. It has an earthy, kind of warm, wintry flavor to it. It's not really sweet like a butternut squash or something like that. It's more on the savory side of things. Cool. So I'll start there, and I'll start exploring that and say, how do I want to showcase this ingredient, right? And I'll just build from there. And for me, it's a very cerebral process. It's like I think through it, right? I'll just say, I want to do this cool dish where, oh, I got like a roasted chicken and then like I'll put this garnish on it. It's more like, okay, what story do I want to tell of the squash in this dish? Do I want to play off its texture, or do I want to completely hide its texture? Right? And then that'll start to dictate how I'll manipulate the product and what the dish will eventually morph into. Rarely do I look at an ingredient and say, okay, here's the dish. Boom.
It's kind of like a domino effect.
Yeah, it's like it starts as an exploration and kind of like a tug and pull and play to figure out where it's going to end up. But I usually start off with an ingredient or some sort of cultural thing that'll kind of start the process, and then I'll start systematically kind of asking questions about where I want the dish to go.
Are you a cookbook person yourself? Do you read cookbooks?
Yes. I look at pictures.
Okay.
I don't read cookbooks. I look at pictures. All right, cool. So
that is really interesting. I think that also goes off a little bit of what Chef Mike Knoll was talking about letting the ingredients tell the story of the dish, which is something that me, who's not a cook, thought was really interesting. I would think that the dish, it started with the dish and then the ingredients.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it does. Like, I think sometimes, like, some chefs operate that way, right? And then you kind of work backwards. But for me, the process is always starting from nowhere and trying to, like, tell a story. Like, and I'm always trying to figure out how to communicate something to the eater about the ingredients. Sometimes they get it. Sometimes they don't. You know, when they get it and they really enjoy it, that to me is a win. Right. That's a super win. Even if they don't get it, which happens more often, people don't really get what I'm doing, but they still enjoy it. That's also a win. Right. Like, as long as people are having a good time enjoying it, I'm happy. But when people really get what I'm trying to do, I feel like I've accomplished something. Yeah. You know? Yeah.
Awesome.
So that's it. That's all we got for today. Join us next time for fucking eating habits, I guess. All right, cool.